Bitcoin's pumping. The market's doing well. We're happy. Thankfully, Donald Trump did not get shot and killed. Because if not today, the trading topics would be a lot different. The markets would have been destroyed. So I like that he was taken care of. He's good to go. Markets seem like they're ready for a phenomenal Q3 and Q4.
Definitely. I know we spoke very briefly then, literally, I think the day after, 2 days after, to arrange the podcast. And then since then, we've had Biden now saying he's not going to
it's wild.
continue on. The landscape is crazy because even the US elections are so important, of course, but then even in this 1 year, we've had the UK elections that just happened. The French elections are going on as well. It's like there's a lot of stuff happening in 2024.
A lot of changes.
Yeah,
a lot of changes on the chessboard per se. But at the end of the day, pattern recognition is key. When you identify patterns, all you have to do is you have to bet towards where you see the cycle headed. So when you see usually Republican presidencies take place, the markets tend to perform extremely well. So people are already pricing in Trump winning, him supporting Bitcoin, him supporting the crypto space, him starting to open up trade a little bit more, reduce corporate tax, which is going to bring more business to America. So he has all these things that are cooking up, markets pricing it in, and I think we are headed somewhere excited. I'm pumped for it.
Definitely. And do you think that it's gonna happen? Do you think he's gonna become president again?
I think he's gonna become president. I think more so than anything, it's gonna give us 4 years where maybe wars and turmoil are gonna be less crazy due to the fact that Russia, China, right now they don't respect the United States. It's very simple, very straightforward. Your president can't walk upstairs, right? So, United States right now is in a little bit of a vulnerable situation. We have Saudi Arabia right now beginning to allow the exchange of oil in other currencies, not just the petrodollar, because that agreement is up. So now what held the dollar strong is no longer there, so now you have force. So Donald Trump has to go around and start making relationships again, mending things up with countries. And I think that that's pretty much what his tenure is going to look like. I think it might be crazy from the inside, and we might see the attempts of potential takeover of elections, but certain things we can't say because they're going to go on YouTube. But yeah,
I find it so fascinating because especially even with Biden stepping down, it'll be a shock to the masses. But I've been hearing about it on Twitter for weeks or maybe even months. Kind of necessary, as you said, like when your president's falling upstairs and not knowing where to go after a speech. But it is crazy. And I know Donald Trump's really heavily been quite vocal on his support for crypto and Bitcoin, for example. I think he's speaking actually at
the Bitcoin conference.
Yeah. But is there any worry that, it's one of those things where it's to get the votes, get the election, and then no action afterwards?
I mean, yes and no. Yes, in the aspect of obviously there's a huge voter base that supports Bitcoin. Therefore, if you support it by proxy, they'll like you more. But there's a ton of billionaires and a ton of lobbying taking place on the crypto side to make sure that crypto wins. Right now, you see a lot of exchanges. I talked to a lot of head of exchanges, and they're telling me, we're getting crackdowns from either the SEC or we're getting crackdowns now from a new organization in Europe called MiCA, MiCA, that is basically the SEC that blankets all of Europe. So now all of these exchanges need to be compliant under this new European SEC. So they're starting to build DEXs and become decentralized because now politics is becoming a tool of weaponry. So you're seeing a lot of billionaires, a lot of very rich companies like Coinbase go to Capitol Hill and say, hey, like we want crypto to be taken care of. So if Donald Trump is taking money from these guys are getting favors in return. It's the name of the game. So he wants to keep crypto in-house. Ideally, the United States build some sort of Bitcoin treasury or reserve. We see the potentiality of Larry Fink becoming maybe involved in the treasury or maybe involved in some sort of financial position advising the president. And we know that he's very pro-Bitcoin now with the Bitcoin ETFs. So now we see the institutionalization of Bitcoin. Now we need it to go to the next phase, which is government awareness. And naturally, all these suits, right? Larry Fink and company, dude, their bags are packed. If you don't think so, then you haven't been paying attention. Fidelity's been buying Bitcoin since 2015, mining it, right? So they're ready to play the game. We see the Ethereum ETF rolling around, the potentiality of a Solana ETF. So now the legal battles are taken care of. Now we know what process to take. But unless the United States, and they've obviously realized it, and I think that this is where it's headed with Trump, unless they kind of lean in and validate crypto internally, crypto's going to go to Dubai, crypto's going to go to Singapore, crypto's going to go overseas. And their companies, they don't care. They'll do it. They'll leave. They've proven it. So the U.S. needs to cultivate it for their own safety and security, for the security of the currency and things of this nature. So I think it's going to be a good thing for crypto. I think we're headed into a really good season, a bullish season, and a season that has been expected for a really long period of time, especially with the ETF approvals beyond just the one of Bitcoin.
Talking of the ETF approvals, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I know it's highlighted a lot and it's obviously changing the landscape of cryptocurrency as a whole, and the access and the finances that are going into it now and the capital rolling in. But I know there'll be people out there as part of the audience who won't understand how important that is, or what the sort of dynamic of the ETFs being approved and being made makes for the market. Could you break that down slightly of like why is it that these ETFs being approved and being made is so important?
So it's all about the path of least resistance. The ETF is the path of least resistance for liquidity and big money to come in. Many of these companies that will invest in an ETF, in a mutual fund, they have investors, policies, things of this nature that they need to comply with. Telling them, hey, go buy Bitcoin and hold it in a ledger is not viable for these companies. An exchange traded fund is the pooling of this money in order to attack or purchase or acquire a certain asset class. In this case, you have the Bitcoin ETF. So the Bitcoin ETF is a cumulative of a lot of companies that have interest in Bitcoin and want Bitcoin exposure without having direct exposure to Bitcoin. So you have the custody or the middleman. So you don't just have BlackRock, you have a ton of other companies that are right now launching their ETFs, not just in the United States, but overseas. And what it's doing is allowing the path of least resistance for institutional capital, people that have policies and rules on how their money is supposed to be managed, and is a lot more conservative than we think, pouring into Bitcoin. Number two, we have sovereign states. Sovereign states and sovereign individuals now getting into Bitcoin. A lot of them do it through big banks, do it through big organizations. So buying Bitcoin directly for them doesn't make sense. They're in it for the trade. They're in it for the money. They don't necessarily care about holding the Bitcoin itself. Might as well just leave it with Coinbase custody. That's how they think about it. So the reason it's important is because it's the path of least resistance, number one. Number two, it's the validation that it's actually a financial market that is accepted. Once the U.S. accepts something as a national asset class or something that the market will kind of consider, it becomes a standard worldwide. So now Bitcoin has become normalized, which is a phenomenal thing. And it's given us a guideline as to what we can and can't do within the crypto space that allows other projects and other companies and other tokens to be able to follow that same path. The Ethereum ETF is on the way as well. And I think that one's going to be massively lucrative. I'm very bullish on ETH. We're sitting at I think right now, a $3,400 ETH. Very cheap, under all-time high. And we could see it push to $5,000, $6,000, even $10,000 with a very bullish scenario.
In terms of like where we're at right now, like we've hovered around, we made an all-time high ever so slightly on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then we had a pullback and we've just sort of been hovering, for a good amount of months now. What are your thoughts? What is the market trying to wait for? Do you think it's like the elections is playing a part of that? Is there any sort of factors that you think are keeping prices sort of subdued at the moment?
I mean, Bitcoin went from 20,000 to 60,000 in the span of a couple months. Now you're just consolidating for another leg up. I mean, the market hasn't really done much. The altcoins obviously have bled out. That's naturally what happens when Bitcoin trends sideways and you have meme coins kind of becoming the main source of liquidity for the market. Everything else kind of gets pulled. But now you're seeing projects resurface. But what I like about the market is that the market, every single bull run, becomes more intelligent. They figure out how they're getting finessed. They figure out, hey, what are fake promises or what are real projects? And they're just starting to validate what the market is actually about, which, believe it or not, it's around meme coins and it's around culture and it's around like gambling and fun and crazy activities. This idea of these boring projects that have 9-year roadmaps on how tokens are going to... People have fallen for so much of this that they don't care anymore. So we're in a completely different market. We're in a lot of a more volatile, fun market, in my opinion, that gives access and opportunity to anybody. I think Bitcoin trending sideways is not only good, it's something that we want because it allows us to pack our bags and it allows us to understand that on the next leg up, if you're positioned properly with these altcoins that are down 70, 80%, when Bitcoin taps all-time high again, $70,000 plus, your altcoins are going to rip and they're going to do extremely well. So what am I allocating to? Number one, always betting on winning teams, right? That's the main narrative. So finding which ones are the popular teams that understand marketing, distribution, and community, super key. Because at the end of the day, how many layer one blockchains exist? How many layer two? It's infinite. It's a ton of them. But it's the one that have the eyeballs. So we'll go into a couple of those later on. And then the second one is narratives and trends. Like, what are the hot narratives? What are the trends? Well, one of the narratives right now is AI. Okay, well, what's the trend inside of crypto for AI? And finding those, identifying those, and then finding the projects that align to those things. So I think it's good. Let's trend sideways a little bit more. No issue whatsoever. But obviously, Bitcoin always makes lower highs, and it's going to continue going up.
One thing I have heard you speak on another podcast in terms of the meme coins, and I found it fascinating because I didn't really think of it in that way. As you've already just highlighted, is like there was a time where we would look, and when I got into crypto, it was a similar thing. Look at the roadmap. Not that I would do it extensively, but it was a case where look at the roadmap. You know, what is the use case for this particular coin, and what's it going to do for the world? And then, you know, as cycles go on, you invest into these coins. Yeah, they move, and you make some profits and stuff, but nothing ends up happening with that roadmap. Nothing ends up happening and being utilized. But yet, what you mentioned in terms of the meme coins is that people are now focused on community. People are focused on there is no roadmap. You're believing into this meme, this what it's doing for culture, and therefore it's taking away the sort of need for like to be validated by this team or roadmap that normally 9 times out of 10 doesn't end up happening anyway.
And it's a difficult thing. Also, if you look at it as somebody who's investing into these things, think about it logically. Like in most projects will go to zero, but think about it logically. Let's say you fund a company. Okay, a couple $1 million. What's the experience of the team actually? Some experience, maybe others, not that much experience. Super well funded, which means you're already killing the drive and the hunger, right? They already have the money. They already have the tokens. How long till they deliver a product? 4, 5, 6 years? How are you going to keep attention during a bear market? You can't. Your project ends up getting absolutely destroyed. And then the final aspect is utility. How many people are actually utilizing what you have? You look at Sandbox or Decentraland from last bull run, dude, there was like 100 people playing the game. So you have a multi-billion-dollar inflated market cap with no real product, no real audience. And that's why these things aren't sustainable. So when people, like you said, they look at all these big roadmaps and they're like, oh, well, you know, I'm going to invest into something legit. Realize that 90% of these guys, they're not going to fulfill anything that they said. They don't have the capabilities. And it's almost impossible to do. How so? You're trying to build a company that's for profit, generating some sort of revenue, and then you're trying to maintain a chart, a crypto chart. These are 2 full-time ecosystems in and of themselves. Imagine launching a publicly traded company and giving it a stock within its first day and having the CEO worry about the stock and the floor price and the performance of the company. What is the success rate of that? Almost non-existent. You have the Ethereums, you have, you know, the instances where teams, the Solanas come together, the Avalanches, and you have superstar teams. You have the Tons, but that's 1 in 1,000. Looking and finding these is difficult. But the reason meme culture is accepted is because people know what they're getting. It's very transparent. It's the most honest part of crypto is memes. You know what you're getting. You're getting a meme coin. No lies.
It's so true, and it's very rare to find. One thing that we've seen over recent months, though, we've seen like a huge. Well, I've noticed it. I'm not sure about yourself, but like a huge uptick in terms of celebrity creating coins, and unfortunately, a lot of them are promoting it. And by the sounds of it, and what I'm reading is that they're being approached to do this. Then afterwards, it's getting rugged, and then they're wondering as well, like what's happened. But and some aren't though. Some are still performing to this day. What are your thoughts on that, though? Because, again, it's kind of off the back of the meme culture and sort of the meme coins performances that they're probably doing this. But, again, they're not really... There's no use case there. There's not really much for the community. It's more so just that they're using their influence to pump these coins up.
The thing about memes is you can't force them.
Hmm.
Like they either work or they don't. The reason Doge works is because everybody fucks with it. Not everybody's gonna fuck with Iggy's ass on a photo. Like it's not. I don't buy that token. I think that that's dumb. But that's just me. Like it's fine, but that's just dumb. Why would I put my money there? I don't. I want culture to pump my bags, not an influencer. An influencer isn't culture. You look at 4chan, you look at Reddit, dude, it's all Paypays, it's all fucking Doges everywhere. That's what people want to talk about. That's where the attention is. So what you're betting on is attention. You're not betting on people. You're betting now on that individual having attention. Well, how much attention can that single individual actually garner? Not much. So unless they're building a movement, which you can't really build when your ass is the logo of the token, right? It doesn't work that way because that's not how culture functions. Then it doesn't make sense. So I'm always looking at what are cultural plays. What is it that people spend their time typing, doing, interacting with? And then I bet on that. I don't bet on an individual. I bet on the influence of the collective idea. In this case, a Dogecoin would make complete sense. They've been cooking up the Dogecoin chart since 2015. Everybody's been talking about it. Elon eventually talked about it. That's the echelons of culture with 100 million viewers. So you need to be paying attention to where the money goes. And the money goes always where the attention flows.
In terms of NFTs, we had a whole market of NFTs. It was literally, so far, it feels like a bubble. Like it went to highs. Even myself bought 2 at a time and didn't end up selling them. And now we don't really hear of NFTs. We don't really see any sort of movement over there. And yet there were talks of beyond just the art, just beyond the sort of hype of what we saw, of it having like a use case, very similar to what we were talking about in terms of previous tokens.